Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Welcome to yet another session in our Conversations on Consciousness series. And today we have with us our very special guest, Neema Majmudar ji. Namaste, Neema ji. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Right. So let's begin the session with a prayer.
Okay, sure.
Sahana vavatu sahanau bhunattu sah viryam karavavahai tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Harihi Om. I would like to introduce Neema ji for the benefit of the audience. Before I do that, I should definitely mention that Neema ji has been a pillar of support and guidance for Indika Moksha.
Yes.
And over the years. So it's just really happy and timely that we have this conversation now, this interview of you now. So Neema Majmudar ji was born in Bombay and has completed Masters in International Affairs from Columbia University and an MBA. She worked at the United Nations in New York, Fiji, and Bangkok. She also worked for AIM for Seva, a movement and an NGO launched by Swami Dayananda Ji Saraswati in 2000 in the field of providing education for underprivileged children in tribal areas of India. Neema ji met Swami Dayananda Ji, a well-known contemporary teacher of Advaita Vedanta in the tradition of Adi Shankaracharya and a scholar in Sanskritam in the USA in 1986 during a conference in Philadelphia. She has been studying Vedanta for the last 25 years or even more, apologies if there is an error over there, and followed a 3.5-year residential course, followed by a 3.5-year residential course with Swami Dayananda Ji at Coimbatore from 1995 to 1998. Neema ji has been giving talks on Bhagavad Gita and various other texts of Advaita Vedanta, and also helps organizations with this knowledge to be more objective, dynamic, and compassionate in an increasingly interconnected and complex world. So there's much more that I could talk about here for the intro, but I would rather like to do that over this conversation over the next 45 minutes to 1 hour. So Neema ji, my first question to begin with would be, could you tell us a little bit about your background, your education, and how you moved into the spiritual journey? Let's start from there. Over to you.
Thank you. I come from a family which had an interesting background. My grandparents were Sanskrit scholars, and they translated Ramayana from Sanskrit to Gujarati following the Anushtup meter. So I have seen that as a child, so I saw them doing, there was Shivalinga at our home, and there were Sanskrit prayers at our home. So I grew up with that. But actually, interestingly, my father belonged to the next generation, and he was into, modern education and Western rationality and all that. So he wanted to bring us up in a fairly kind of modern way. So I had influence of both. I saw both. And my father was a very successful individual, and he was brilliant. So on one hand, I had influence of my grandparents, which is the traditional, influence. And on the other hand, I had a very kind of forward-looking father who wanted to integrate with the changing times and believed in success and, believed in doing well, while, of course, living a life of values. So, and we all, we came from a family where people were ambitious, And they wanted to send us abroad for education and all. So it was almost kind of understood that after we graduate, we finish our undergraduate, we'll go to the US for masters, and there was no distinction between male and female. Just what my father wanted from my brother, also he wanted from his daughters. So he wanted to send us to top universities and everything. So I went, and I was very happy to have that opportunity. Without my striving, it was almost like a family tradition where my sister went abroad and I also went abroad to study. And what I was expecting I mean, I really enjoyed my time in the US. I don't want to kind of put it down in any way at all. But while I learned a lot, and while I met a lot of people and exposed to a very different way of learning, because at least the schools that I went to in India, they were just emphasizing on remembering things and, just mugging up things and reproducing. Here, there was a whole new way of learning where people, the universities and professors, they expect you to think about things and give your own opinions and analyze the things, and rather than just kind of reproduce what they had said. So that really opened my mind, and it was, I think, very good to meet people from across the world, and also to be exposed to an education system which kind of totally captured me, instead of this kind of a very predictable education system that, at least I'm sure things have changed in India now, but at least in those times. But one thing, I mean, even though I was discovering the US and I was very happy, but I saw one thing that, people all around, whether they came from the US or they came from different parts of the world, there was this lingering dissatisfaction, lingering a kind of search, even though Columbia is one of the Ivy League schools and it's one of the best schools in the US and also in the world. But still, I found that the human being as a human being, right? If you take away all the external accomplishment, the core of the human being is still searching and is still dissatisfied. So I think that kind of was a very big, discovery for me. And it also kind of validated my own feeling that, yes, I have done this and I have done that externally. I'm kind of a little bit of a star, but it's not that I was feeling good. So I think in that we kind of shove, we don't pay attention to it. So when I started becoming aware of that it seems to be a common condition. Not only I have it, but everybody else has it, that there is a nagging or there is a continuous sense of kind of something is not complete. That's when I kind of started searching for an answer. And I was not sure where the answers were, and I don't know, but one thing, I think my samskaras of my grandparents, they made me a little bit search in the so-called spiritual domain. But I didn't know anything, and I wasn't actually exposed to anything other than my grandparents. So I didn't know where to look. And by chance, I met Swamiji, and then my journey started, So this is how it was just, thinking more fundamentally as a result of exposure to a new culture. So I owe this search a lot to my stay in the US.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I am being reminded of a quote which I recently read of Swami Tejamanandaji. It's not the exact words, but I think he says the recipe to unhappiness is to ignore what is and to long for what is not. Something like that, he says. And that, I mean, I'm able to relate what you just said with that powerful quote that he had said. Thank you so much for sharing that journey of yours, Neemaji. So following that, with the next question would be, could you tell us a little bit about the experience of meeting Swamiji?
Yes.
How did it happen by chance, and how was the first meeting, and what happened thereafter? Could you please share?
Yeah, thank you. In fact, as I was searching, but I didn't quite know where to go and what. I didn't know anybody. But once I was visiting a university in Philadelphia, University of Pennsylvania, and I was just passing by and I saw a poster, and the poster was about Swamiji's talk. He was giving a one-day seminar from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. At UPenn on one of the weekends, and I didn't know who he was, but what attracted me was the title of the talk. The title of the talk was, "Who are you and what is your relationship with the universe and the cause of the universe?" And I was so fascinated. I said, you know what? Who even attempts to give you an answer to such fundamental questions of life? Generally, even if you go to some spiritual talk, they'll give you some practice or do breathing or sit in meditation, but nobody attempts to actually answer a question which is so big, and so I think that really caught my curiosity. So I decided that I will go, and it was a 9 to 4 seminar. So initially, I thought that I'll just go for a couple of hours and see what it is. But when I went there, I was totally, spellbound by what he was telling me. And of course, he explained the whole vision of Vedanta in that seminar. But I obviously didn't understand everything. But there are few things that caught my attention. The first thing that Swamiji, said that this is a spiritual heritage of India. So he didn't take ownership, right? He says this is the knowledge which is contained in the Upanishads and in Bhagavad Gita. So it's not like I am the one who's telling you all of this. This knowledge has been going on for generations and being passed on through Guru Shishya Parampara. And I like that fact because, I was not interested in following anybody. I was really interested in knowing. So that's why it attracted me. And the second thing he actually also, he said that even the Shankaracharya ji used to say that, unless, you are convinced of the reason why Shruti is right, you don't need to just blindly accept it. Let 1,000 Shruti say what they say, but if it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't actually, it's not about quoting anything, but it is about understanding. So that means until you understand what is being said, you have to keep an open mind and keep listening and see for yourself whether what Shruti says is right or what you think is right. And that was a great challenge for me because it was not like, okay, now I'm in the hands of Shastra, so I have to have Shraddha, all these cliche words people use. And now you just have to kind of, listen to whatever the teacher and the Shastra is saying and, put your thinking mind at bay. So I particularly, I was from a slightly rebellious background. So that analytical approach really, really helped me. And this is exactly what I had learned in the US, to analyze things and look into things rather than just quoting and memorizing and just reproducing, something that is given to you. So I think I really loved his approach, which was extremely analytical. And so that was something which was nice. As I told you in the first meeting, I didn't really understand much. But one thing stayed with me, and that was he was talking about a relationship between clay and pot. And what he was saying is that, it seems as though there are two things, but there is only one, right? That pot is there. It's not that it's not there. It's not an illusion, but it's only a form. But if you count the substance, then there is only clay. And if you count the substance, which is only clay, then let there be one pot or 100 pots or 1,000 pots. It doesn't matter. The numbers don't matter anymore, because when the substance is only one, then what others only become forms. And there is no addition to the reality. And that was something, I tell you, it was like I had never thought about, if I applied the same logic. And what he was then trying to say is, the world is nothing but forms. And suppose you find that clay equivalent, which is the basis of everything, then that is that one reality, which is the only reality which exists, and everything else is just a form, and it has a dependent reality. And I think I understood that, I mean, not totally, but I did understand little bit. And that itself was very, very fascinating to me. So I said Upanishads are showing us the world in a totally different way than what we are used to. And it's totally logical. It's not like, oneness is some romantic idea and, we are made to believe in, and, we are all flying with some great, concepts which don't have any basis. So that got my attention, and I decided to pursue it a little bit more further.
That's really, really inspiring to hear, Nimaji. And I think that was also something that led you to writing Living the Vision of Oneness, exploring realities and growing as an individual. So I'm curious to know a little more about it. So could you share some insights on the book? Yeah.
Yeah, I was, of course, very fascinated by the big vision of Vedanta, of, that all that is here is one, and that one manifests as many. And from the standpoint of manifestation, it is called Ishvara, but Swarupa is Brahman. So all that was totally, very challenging initially because the mind is not used to seeing the world like that. And, and so many different prakriyas in the Upanishads to point this, point this truth. And so Vedanta study can get pretty technical. There is so much terminology. There are words like Satya, Mithya, Upadhi, Upahita. So there is Maya. So there are so many things which, and it can fascinate you and it can totally take you. But at times, you wonder that how does all of this really help me? Even though it is extremely challenging and very, 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 it's like a huge, gift of thinking for the mind. But how does it help you in daily living? Because you still have your parents, you still have your family, you still have your job to do, and you still have whatever that you're doing. And those things continue to be challenging. It's not like you understand everything is Brahman and everything is Ishvara. So everything is going to change overnight and everything is all going to become very pleasant. So there are challenges in the world. So how does one reconcile this amazing vision of Vedanta, which is, of course, cognitive, and cognitively needs to be understood. And it stretches your mind and it makes it subtle and it makes it refined. But then how do you relate it to your day-to-day living? And I think many people, as initially they were my questions, then I had an answer. But when I started teaching, I also started recognizing that people, of course, some of them are interested in this big inquiry, but many are interested in changing their lives. They're changing their lives and their surroundings and their attitudes and the way they live. So I thought that bridge between the vision and our day-to-day living has to be met. So I decided to write this book that, the first chapter of the book talks about the vision of oneness, what Vedanta is talking about. But the rest of the chapters are devoted to how does one live that vision of oneness? How does it translate into my living differently. And I think a lot of people, I got so many, compliments on this book. People wrote from Brazil and from Argentina and saying that, they were all studying Vedanta, but they were never able to totally relate to how you can actually translate this vision into changing the way you live, right? That inner transformation. And, it created that bridge. So this was my my assessment of what people need and what I had also gone through as I was learning. So this was to address that.
Wow, that's very, very thoughtful and very meaningful, I would say, because as you mentioned, this was and this continues to be a very big concern, especially in the study of Vedanta. So thank you so much for addressing that through the book, Nimaji. So that takes me to the next question about your work with Suryaji in incorporating the concepts from the West, from domains such as psychology, ethics, physics, neurobiology, and management, into and with Advaita, with the richness of knowledge from our own land. So, what are some of the initiatives and projects that have been enabled by you and Suryaji? If you could share that.
Yeah. So one thing that I wanted to first little bit talk about conceptually, and just some facts that Surya has PhD. By the way, I'm not a doctor. I just have master's degree. So, but Surya has a PhD in chemistry from France. And so he has very, deep interest in science, and he grew up, right? And also he was exposed to physics and everything. And he is a professor in management school, which is called SPJIMR, which is one of the top 5 business schools in India. SP Jain Institute of Research and Management, right? So management is something that he also teaches. And my background is obviously, international affairs and, studying with Swamiji for 3.5 years. So what we thought is, and one thing that Swamiji taught us, because I think sometimes the people have this feeling that let's keep our tradition, let's not mix it with other things. That's a kind of, there is a one view which says that, okay, when you study Upanishads, only study Shankara Bhashyam. What is the need to talk about Western ethics? What is the need to talk about science? There is no need, because before all of this came, Shastra was there and it was able to communicate what it wanted to communicate. Then why do you bring all of this? But the way Swamiji made us think is that, the Adi Shankaracharya, not only he taught Advaita, but he kind of had debates with his contemporaries, and there were people who had different view than him, right? And in those days, it was Vaisheshika and Nayayika, Sankhya, Yoga, Purva Mimamsaka, Buddhist schools, and he engaged with them. It's not like, oh, we are Vedantins and, we do what we have to do and we teach what we have to teach. All his commentaries, right? There is a whole system. And what is that system? That initially he explains what Vedas talk about, which is called Siddhanta. And then he takes Purva Pakshas, and Purva Pakshas are all the opponents, right? They are not agreeing with you, and they are raising questions, and they are not ordinary people. They are scholars, right? They are not, you can't just shoo them away and say, oh, you're misguided, right? And he engages with them. And that is what we call analysis, right? And then what is the premise of this debate? The premise of this debate is that whoever has the truth cannot be contradicted. And if you do not have the final truth, somewhere along the line, you will find some logical contradiction. So that means if Adi Shankaracharya ji was doing it with his contemporaries, then what Swamiji was saying is, now the world has moved on. Now Sankhya, Vaisheshika and all are replaced by ethics, psychology, right? Scientists. And people are exposed to those thoughts, and they are buying into those thoughts. And maybe they don't quite see how Vedanta's relationship with those thoughts are. And that's why people don't actually, they think that Vedanta is something which is ancient, it is orthodox, but now the world has moved to this new knowledge. So it is, maybe Vedanta is redundant. So this is why it is extremely important to take the existing thinking, what people are thinking, what ideas are popular, and examine them vis-a-vis Vedanta, and show that none of these modern ideas can contradict what Vedanta says. I tell you, it makes your teaching so much more relevant. It makes it so much more contemporary. And it doesn't do any harm to Vedanta. It only embellishes Vedanta. It only shows that, hey, this knowledge which is going on for it's a beginningless knowledge. It is so profound that any advances which are done in any domain, they cannot contradict what Vedanta says. That's what gives strength to Vedanta, and it doesn't dilute Vedanta. And I think that was a huge learning for us. He was so open. He was always learning from neuroscientists, and he was learning from physicists, and he was entering debates, and physicists were listening to him with so much intent, because he was not saying, oh, you guys don't have truth and I have truth, but he was engaging with them, understanding what they were saying, and bringing in Vedanta and showing them how Vedanta takes the whole teaching, takes the whole subject, to next level, for which neither science has any answer, nor any other thing has any answer. So we decided to follow that approach, and it has been extremely successful. We talk to really top people in many different fields. And and not only to a few people here and there who are just interested in the traditional thing. And I think we feel that it's a big contribution. And Swamiji also, when he heard that we are doing these kind of things, he says, you know what, it's very good that you bring Vedanta to the mainstream thinking, and not just a few hundreds who are interested in Vedanta and you keep teaching them. It has to go out, because it's the truth. It's for the whole humanity. It is not only for a few people, right? So we are trying our best to do justice to this amazing, profound teaching, and to bring it in the forefront.
Wow, this is very beautiful and inspiring to listen to, Nimaji. And it does come along with its challenges, isn't it? Because a lot of times we see that many of them are closed, and some of them, we all come with some biases and so on and so forth. So but still, to engage, the idea to engage and share these ideas and thoughts, to pass it on, so that it just creates that buzz and then it takes on from there. I think that's really, yeah.
I think, and also the founder of Indica Moksha, Harikiranji, he's also a great thinker, and he's a visionary. I know him for many years, and he also, his idea behind starting this is to just make this knowledge, which is a treasure, not only for Indians, but for the whole humanity, more and more available, right? And open it up, and why should we be apologetic? Why should we be, if Vedanta is talking about oneness, then it can't be just, kept as a secret. Oneness is the reality. and people need to know about it. At least we have to do our job of talking about it, and there's nothing to be shy about. It's the most profound knowledge, and it's the most logical knowledge that is available to humanity, and it is a knowledge which can potentially bless the humanity and change the way we do things and change the way we live. So our job is to just talk about it. Then what happens is within Ishvara's order, right? So this is something that we have. And in fact, Sarvajnatvam of Ishvara includes everything. It includes psychology, it includes physics. It's not like Sarvatvam of Ishvara is only with reference to Veda. All that is here is Ishvara and Ishvara's knowledge, which is manifesting as what? Biological order, physical order, psychological order, physiological order. This is all intelligence of Ishvara. So you can't create a kind of a division between Vedas and every other forms of knowledge. Even Upanishads talk about what there are two kinds of vidya, Paravidya and Aparavidya. So it's not like only you have to study Paravidya. Aparavidya creates an infrastructure, right? Because just language is also Aparavidya, but language is needed for Vedanta. You understand? Ethics, of course, living a life of dharma in itself is not Paravidya, but it helps. Understanding the mithyatvam of the world. Quantum physics helps, right? So that means Aparavidya and Paravidya go hand in hand, right? It is not that you only have to kind of keep teaching Paravidya and look down upon Aparavidya, right? So that is very important to understand. So let me just give you a few little simple examples, right? So in management, for example, one of the biggest challenge is how to get your people to perform and be motivated. That's one challenge. And the second is, these corporates, now they are big decision makers. And the kind of decisions they make, they impact the society, right? So just 2 days ago, I read in Times of India that the quality of air in Bombay, right, for one past week has been second worst in the world. So what it means is, we make, of course, we individuals make decisions, but corporates also make decisions which impact not only them, but it impacts the whole humanity. So if they are exposed to this idea of oneness and interconnectedness and the actions that they perform today and the repercussions they would have on the society, and when they create some disharmony, how they are included in order of Ishvara. So the effects come back to them. So all of that, suppose we teach them, it will only make a difference in a positive way. So, and they are intelligent, they are able to get it. You can't just say, oh, they are all materialistic people, because they are smart people. And if you, not in this traditional way, but if you actually make them see the implications of learning Vedanta and understanding that we are all part of one interconnected, interrelated reality, and the intelligence which connects us all is Ishvara, they get it. It's not that they don't get it, right? And even neurosciences we use because a lot of times people come to us and say that I've been listening to Vedanta, but I'm still angry. I'm still kind of, I still at times become sorrowful. And sometimes I have resentment towards somebody that I think, it was not fair to me. So what do I do now? Right. So, and they feel very bad. They feel that, oh, the teaching is not working for them because they've listened to it for so long. And it's still kind of, they still go back into their behaviors. And what we do is we bring neurosciences to tell them that, there are neuron pathways. The way you have acted and repeatedly acted for suppose 20 or 30 years, it cannot be undone overnight, because there are actually in the brain, there are the neuron pathways which are formed. So the way you are used to thinking, your brain will automatically go there. So that means, what does this teaching do? The teaching brings another way of looking at things, another way of thinking about things and acting. So what you're doing is giving new inputs to the brain. So over a period of time, with these new inputs, when they become strong, the old past patterns, right, they begin to dismantle and the new pattern of thinking emerges. And that process to happen, this is called neuroplasticity. That process to happen, it takes time. It cannot be done overnight. And when you understand the workings of the brain, then what people don't continue to blame themselves. They understand that any change in behavior biologically takes time. So there is nothing wrong. All they have to do is what Lord Krishna was talking about, abhyasa. What is abhyasa? Repetition. Why? Because the past behaviors were repeated so many times and they have become very firm. Now, what do you need to do? The new behaviors you have to keep reinforcing again and again and again till the time that the old gives way and new ways of thinking become your own. Right, ways of being, and that everybody has to go through. Nobody can change overnight, and you're totally fine if you can't change overnight. It gives them so much relief and so much enthusiasm, and not like, oh my God, I can't do it, or self-condemnation, where they, oh, I'm unable to progress spiritually. So all, we use, neurosciences, and we use to help people, right, in the pursuit.
And just to, emphasize on the multidisciplinarity of Vedanta, because in whatever domain you take, it's relevant, as you just mentioned.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right.
And
it is so important to give it its right place and not just isolate it from everything else, but show that, hey, all this is amazing. At some point, there is a convergence, because Vedanta is the final truth, and convergence, and at the same time, Vedanta shows something more than what other disciplines can show. That's what is the beauty of Vedanta, right? So let it shine. Let it shine through the teachers, right? So
indeed, and this shift from looking at just the silos but the whole, this shift is indeed, as you just mentioned, is the work of the hour. We need to really do that so that the vision of oneness can be really embodied. So
yeah, one vision of oneness cannot exclude anything, right? Neither it can exclude people, nor it can exclude any thoughts. It cannot exclude any knowledge. It has to include everything and reconcile everything into one. That is the beauty of Vedanta.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Nimaji. Could you share some, teachings from Bhagavad Gita that could be applied to daily life and with respect to promoting one's growth?
Yeah. So, there is a big cliche about also, again, this knowledge that, you have to pursue this knowledge wholeheartedly, and you have to leave everything behind, and, you have to move and, live a life of recluse, and immerse yourself in the studies, and, and the world is an illusion, and you have to free yourself from desires, and you have to detach from the world. These ideas are so prevalent, and I'm a little bit surprised because there is a beautiful verse in the Gita which says it's not about leaving anything, it's about changing your attitude. Where you see a problematic world, that's exactly where you have to see Ishvara. And when you see Ishvara, that's where you have to see Ishvara's final truth, which is Brahman. It's not about leaving anything. Oneness means, where will you live and go? Go where, right? So that means there is a beautiful verse in the Gita which expresses this idea, which says, Swakarmana tamabhyarcha siddhim vidyati manava. So this is a very big a big statement that Lord Krishna is saying, that what is how that swakarma, that through your own actions, right, offer it to the altar of Ishvara. And where is this Ishvara? Ishvara is not a person, to the altar, which is the universe. So what does it mean? Your actions, the way you act in this world, becomes your offering to Ishvara. So what does it mean? You honor Ishvara's laws of dharma, Ishvara's laws of the karma, dharma, everything, not hurting, ahimsa, kshantihi, accommodating others. So when you act like that, then what happens is Ishvara blesses you back. So this is how blesses you back with maturity, antakarana shuddhi, and finally the knowledge that Ishvara and you are essentially one. So what does it mean? It is what? That is a life of a karma yogi. And what is a life of a karma yogi? That the same actions, right? Your engagement with the world, which produced sadness or fears or anger, that same interaction has to be continued to undo all of that. Undo all of that by changing the way you see things and changing the way you act. So that is very, very powerful, and that we all need to learn, that a real spiritual person, like Lord Krishna himself, he was fully engaged and he had difficult decisions to make through his life. And he met all the challenges, but he was free here. He was free here because of knowledge, right? And that's what we all have to aspire to be.
Very true. Because when there are sorrowful experiences, I think a very strong sense of victimhood can easily take over. Just take the example of Karna, Nimaji, because even he had a lot of unpleasant experiences through life, but maybe I'm just theorizing, maybe a sense of victimhood took over and led him to whatever he did. But at the same time, as you mentioned, Krishna, while being engaged, the view and how established he was in his own wisdom, that kind of a example. Yeah.
Absolutely, because Karna, when he was abandoned when he was young by Kunti, and he was brought up by this charioteer, and he through his whole life was lived from that hurt, right? And that it made him feel inadequate. He wanted to prove himself. He felt that he was not respected enough. And that's why Duryodhana, who gave him that little respect, he gave his 100% loyalty to him without thinking about what is this Duryodhana and what is he doing. And he just had one thing, and that is what I will support him no matter what. So this is what we call, along with victimhood, right, that self-pity, comes this whole decision-making process becomes all distorted. You start aligning with people who are adharmic, and you feel that your loyalty, you have to be loyal to them, and you keep quiet. And this leads to disastrous results, right? Whereas Lord Krishna could have also complained, because his mother also had to leave him with Yashoda Maiya. He was also not with his parents for so many years of his life. And he had so many different things, right? His own uncle wanted to kill him. He had so many things going on in his life, and he never complained. He never complained, and he was never bitter about anything. And he was always playing his flute, and he was very cheerful and very mischievous, and at the same time, totally wise, totally brilliant, right? And so that is all, life cannot be lived as a victim. Life has to be lived with wisdom. And this is what Gita teaches us.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you so much. And I think that's going to be a wonderful way to also conclude this conversation. I wish we could continue on and on, but I think the opportunity to do that will emerge very soon again. So once again, on behalf of Indica Moksha, I would like to express my gratitude to you, Nimaji, And I look forward to learning from you and also having some more conversations with you and Suryaji in the near future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.